I'm in Prague on the last day of a 3-day media forum panel, and in being here I've met many interesting journalists and experts, and one of them is sitting with me here. Dirk, could you please introduce yourself?
I'm Dirk Pohlmann, the name is clear, and I've been working as a journalist for more than 30 years now. I've done about 20 documentaries, aired in more than 30 countries in TV, including Russia, USA, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, nearly all of them in Australia, which is weird, yeah. So not all of the documentaries everywhere, and I've worked for a long time as a science reporter, sometimes as a travel reporter, a lot of technology, and then I went, my specialty is Cold War operations, intelligence Cold War operations, and that really shifted my worldview in the last 20 years. The more I got to know, the less it was getting in congruence with what I thought before. So I would argue that by getting to know what is behind things and researching that, my worldview has changed to if we want democracy, we have to do a lot against what is currently going on. And this is one of the reasons why I'm here. I think that Russia is depicted as a villain, and my experience is that RT is doing a good job in journalism, is one of the rare dissenting voices. I've been, for example, for some time I was in Vietnam, and I went through all the stations, Al Jazeera, CNN, BBC World, Deutsche Welle, and so on. And then in the end, I always looked at RT because it was the most interesting dissenting view. All the others more or less have the same, and I can judge from my own experience as a documentary filmer that the freedom in the Western media is a very limited, narrow channel. If you go outside there, you are in trouble, and it will end your career, really. Yeah.
Dirk, your presentation yesterday was fascinating. It was excellent on Wikipedia, so I really wanted you to kind of give a mini version of your presentation here.
Okay. Wikipedia is the number 5 website worldwide, and we all think it's kind of a very wonderful gaining knowledge, collecting knowledge of the world encyclopedia, open source, everybody can write in there. It's kind of the great projects of the internet age. And that's what I thought until 2 years ago, when a colleague of mine told me about some things going on about Daniele Ganser, a Swiss scientist who had done a very interesting doctor's thesis on Gladio and became kind of an academic shooting star, and then went to the topic of 9/11 and was fired from his academic career, and now they even tried to smear him they tried to get his doctor's thesis away, his doctor title away from him too, yeah.
To discredit him then.
Yeah, it's and it's very ugly. It's very ugly, and meanwhile I know Ganser, and he's not only one of the most kind persons that I got to know, he's also a real Swiss one. It means really neutral, and he's a good academic, and what he was delivering on Gladio is outstanding. It was the first academic work. So he's been smeared on Wikipedia, and whenever somebody tried to correct that, for example, he's been called a conspiracy theorist and an anti-Semitic person, and that in one paragraph, like 3 or 4 times. So it really sticks, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then somebody tried to say that he is investigating various theories to 9/11. And then it's immediately re-edited within minutes, and the persons who did the editing have been blocked by Wikipedia because of vandalism, and most of the times for lifetime. Sometimes immediately you do something like this, you try to re-edit from conspiracy theorist that he's investigating several theories, and then you're out. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that Wikipedia worked that way. I didn't know that there are levels that you can write, but then somebody has to acknowledge it or give a stamp that it's okay.
This is why your presentation resonated with me. Sorry to butt in, but because as I mentioned, I have a small smear entry on me on Wikipedia, and supporters did try to edit it, and right away it was changed back.
Yeah. This is what happened here on the conference, that afterwards a lot of people came to me and said, I need to talk to you because they all have this experience and they all think it's individual. Mm-hmm. I think it's only them, but it is a structure. And this was what my lecture was about. We looked into that, and then the first thing that you have to know is in Germany it's about 200,000 people, slightly less, who are logged in, so let's say, sometime had a logged into Wikipedia, and this is the number that Wikipedia proposes. So we are many, and this is the swarm intelligence thing, and then only 17,000 of them have done one edit, and then it goes down like if you have people more than 1,000 edits per month, and there are people who do that, and these are only 80 persons. So in effect, Wikipedia boils down to a small, very active group. And if you look up something like photosynthesis or a thing in biochemistry, let's say, or in mathematics, it's good. Yeah. But if anything is connected to a political opinions, for example, of a glyphosate, so Monsanto, that's already tainted in German Wikipedia, and you can see whenever it's politically interesting, especially if it's regarding the geopolitical situation or detrimental to the image of the United States and Israel, then it is edited and cleaned, so to speak, by this group. So we looked, my colleague and me, we started to look into this group. First we got a lot of input from the people that have been blocked, because some of them have been working a long time for Wikipedia, and it's kind of a hobby for many people, and it was even my old school teacher in German had, after his doctor thesis, which he did with 60, tried to edit stuff, that the research he'd done in historical things that was about Heinrich Himmler, into Wikipedia, and same thing happened to him, and he said it was a strange experience. So this is the usual experience of people who do that, and I had it myself. I've done about 20 documentaries, but for 3 of them I offered in Wikipedia. Simply, I said, I have a ton of material, and if you want sources, I can help with that. I have folder after folder of these things, and I probably can relate to that. And then I looked into the article that was on the Swedish submarine affair or scandal, which in effect meant that during the 80s, after Reagan came to power, there were hundreds of submarine sightings in Swedish waters attributed to the Soviets, which made Olof Palme's détente policy impossible, because it looked like while he was talking to the Soviets, they were doing in his backyard whatever they wanted. But my documentary was about the case that really none of these cases, except for the first one, where a Soviet submarine went aground, which is a very, very interesting case. I recommend my documentary on that because we have the Admiral Lyons, who was the vice chief of the navies. When I asked him, was it you? And he started to laugh and said, some things I still cannot tell. And he said, and he was, as short as to saying, yes, it was us, as it's possible without saying that. And there's a lot of evidence for that all of this is in intelligence operations. We know, meanwhile, that the submarines were British, American, and Italian. They are the world champions in mini-subs. And so that was, I offered to put that in there, and then I wrote a paragraph, and they said that that Weinberger, I have had that interview in my film, and he said Weinberger said that he had informed the Swedish government about the intrusions into Swedish waters. And I looked at that and I said, that's exactly the case, that the people in the government didn't know that it was Americans, and that even created quite a fuss when a Swedish journalist in 2000 made this interview, and I said, I think I have to correct it. And to correct it, I put the original interview in the discussion page, and then was deleted. And at that time I thought it was a mistake, and I put and said something went wrong, here it is, and then they deleted it again, and then they started to edit me out. And that's when I noticed, and I wrote that, I said something is fishy here. This is not about what is true or not, this is about something else. So I was pre-tuned for what I read then. And then we found out that, as I said, that these 80 people, they have kind of a common worldview, which is pro-American, pro-Israeli, and leftist. We have a party group in the German lefts, call themselves anti-Germans, who have exactly this very strange combination. But they reign Wikipedia on the political side. And then I read a study from Purdue University that it was the same in the United States. Purdue looked through all the Wikipedia entries from 2005 to 2015 and found that there's a group of 1% who added 70% of the content, and especially in political topics or historic topics. It's a mini group, and they considered it to be like a religious sect or a sectarian activist group, and their fuel is the power that they have to say this is the truth, this is not the truth, because Wikipedia is supposed to be an encyclopedia, and you think it's concise and truthful and aiming for objectivity, yeah. But they can slant it, so they can use this cover of having an objective encyclopedia, and they can work according to the political views and you really give misinformation to a ton of people. And especially important, if you look up a person and you go into Google and type it in, the first thing you will find if he's on Wikipedia is Wikipedia. And then you can slant the way the person is looked at. And I had that myself now after we published our research on Wikipedia and uncovered the identity of two of the people. I come to that. My entry was slanted into being an anti-Semite, conspiracy theorist, and whatever. Yeah. So they used the power that they have. You criticize Wikipedia, and you get punished inside Wikipedia for telling what they've done. I didn't make up anything. And then other people, I started to get reactions because this is very, very powerful tool. It's a monopoly worldwide. What we did is we looked at two people who were hyperactive and tried to find out who they were. And that is really, really difficult. For one person, it was because he changed his name, for example. And but we found that out, and it was one person. Both of them were from this political left side, as I described, pro-Israel, pro-American, but not a little bit, but completely. I mean, their topic is they consider themselves in a way Marxists, but the main thing in Marxism is who owns the factories, and they make the main thing what attitude do you have towards Jews in Israel. So it's about Jews, and Israel is the country protecting the Jews. So this is the main thing in history of all. So, and that is why America is so important, because it protects Israel and the Jews. Yeah. So this is their main topic, and this is why they re-edit things about American foreign policy and about Israeli foreign policy, about security politics. So we were interested who these people were, and the one is a guy who was a piano teacher at the university, and he's a member of a party, and that's again typically Wikipedia. He wrote the entry on that party to 85% himself, and of course it's a very good party, as you can imagine. And these things are possible in Wikipedia, and we published it, and nothing happens really. Yeah, it's they don't react to it. And the other guy was much more interesting. He was a former candidate for the German Parliament for the left-wing party, which became the predecessor of that, PDS, which turned into the left, which is called now. And he was not very successful, and you can say he switched his political career to Wikipedia, where he can work from underground, be very influential, much more influential than he was there. He was not elected, but he became a member of the Bavarian subgroup of this party. He smeared like 15 people to the very negative and some very positive, and these people were very interested. We told them about that, and they said, wow, yeah, they didn't know who did it to them, because in Wikipedia everything is anonymous. And then we also found out that he had been a conscientious objector
in Germany.
Then he tried to become a lieutenant in the German army afterwards, which is a bit of a contradiction, and he also was a volunteer for the Israeli Defense Forces. And we have two, I don't know what you call that in English, under oath you write something and say this is true, from two persons from the left party who knew him, saying that there's a photo of him in Israeli paratrooper uniform with ranks insignia, with a gun and with a helmet. And he officially, also under oath, denied that it's true. That is so basically.
What's his name?
Now he's Grünewald, and before that he was called Egerer, Jörg Matthias Egerer, and now he's Jörg Matthias Claudius Grünewald. He married obviously, I think, a Jewish lady, because at the same year he converted to Judaism. He before was a Catholic, but only on paper, I guess. Yeah. And a funny thing we also found, there's a journalist, quite famous journalist. Okay, famous or not, he's employed by one of the conservative newspapers, And he was smeared too. That was because he didn't like him during school years. They were in the same class. So this is the level of objective encyclopedia reporting on Wikipedia that you find. And we published that, and it was quite a big fuss. And we got a ton of mails because he smeared a ton of people who all contacted us. And then he sued us. And basically, to cut a long story short, we won the case. And now he went into the second round on legal terms, and that's very costly. But we think we will win the second case again. But this gives you an idea what Wikipedia is about. And then we got into contact with an American colleague, Helen Buiniski, who are highly, she's a very, very good journalist on this. And we basically found the same thing for Wikipedia in English.
Yeah.
And it's the same slant. So it's not random. It's not a small group of people, and here they are right wing, here they are left wing. It seems the same direction, because here on the conference then several people came to me and said, I thought I'm the only one. But it's exactly the same again. If you are, for example, connected in any way to Russia, or think that Russia is not the villain of the century, then you will have these people on your track.
Yeah. Now, yesterday when we were chatting last night, you mentioned also Wikipedia in Israel.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that?
That's what we had already found out, that Israel is the model for this. Yeah, Israel spends, for example, they have a Ministry for Strategic Affairs, and they spend $70 million on editing Wikipedia and Facebook and YouTube comments. They have organized it on a state level, and it's part of the information warfare that they lead. So, and it's also that in Germany there is right now discussion to put together the public broadcasting stations with Wikipedia, and this has already been done with Israeli TV stations. So it is like where everything is tested and tested out, and Jimmy Wales is very often in Israel, the guy who is leading Wikimedia, which is the mother company, so to speak, of Wikipedia. He has been a PR agent for Shimon Peres and Tzipi Livni, who had been a Mossad agent for 4 years too before becoming foreign minister. So there's a close connection to the state, and you could also say to intelligence. And this is not what we thought Wikipedia would be. Yeah, I mean, the idea of an open source encyclopedia is good, but Wikipedia is a rotten case. The article from Helen Buiniski is rotten to the core, and I would agree to that. This is, if there's a mistake for 10 years, then it's not a mistake, it's intentional. And of course, it can be used as a tool because people think it's this shiny encyclopedia objective, and if you have that in your hand, you can define the consensus on things. You have the definition on anything political, on historical items. You can taint it, yeah. And so I think it's quite clear that if there's a monopoly on the description on historic causes, you know who's going to get interested into that.
Yeah, so you just reminded me of, just as people think that Wikipedia is a good go-to source for factual information, I think some people also think the same of Snopes. And Snopes, I haven't dug into them except in a rebuttal I wrote to a smear entry they did on myself, but they've whitewashed the white helmets in Syria, they've whitewashed terrorism in Syria essentially. Do you know anything about Snopes?
No, I've not looked into that. You know, the thing is that structurally, I think we should take care of things which have this aura of truth-telling, like also fact-checking and all these.
Yes.
I mean, fake news was a big thing here, but I think it's more the way to cope with that is having different sources and having different views. I think when we talk about variety in journalism, we should rather think about that we all live in filter bubbles, and it would be much more important to have 2 or 3 views side by side to check who's telling the truth or not. Yeah, many of these things, we live in an age where the so-called quality media hand out political propaganda, large scale, yeah, and it's not really journalism. I mean, journalism is what you are doing, going somewhere, having a look at it, and you will never return the same than being the same person as when you went there. And instead of that, we have the Syrian Bureau for Information, what it's called, in London.
Yeah,
and one
Syrian
person,
Observatory for Human
and
Rights.
they provide disinformation to 60 new. What was it? American singer-songwriter said 64 channels and nothing on. It's always the same on the 64 channels. There is no real variety. You have different names, but we would need much more of this old style reportage reporting, that you go somewhere and somebody tells you what he's seen. And that would be probably different if it's different people. But what I see is not, like we discussed here, a slight malfunctioning of the system. It's intentionally a rigged system.
Absolutely.
And that is a huge problem. And the problem is not Russia. The problem is the United States corporate media. Yeah.